Hello everyone and welcome to Poser's Full Movie Recaps. Our story today is about a newlywed couple who decided to take their honeymoon to the next level and goes on an adventure trip to the Grand Canyon. It soon escalates when their tour guide has fallen ill after getting bitten by a rattlesnake. Left alone in the middle of nowhere, the couple navigates to find their way back, while fighting a pack of wolves that has been trying to eat them. It all begins with a man named Nick with his new wife Lori, driving to reach the gateway to the Grand Canyon. After they arrive at their destination, they check into a motor hotel to rest for the night. They are excited for their upcoming mule ride to Grand Canyon on the weekends, and even share their plans with the grumpy motel employee. As they head to their room, the newly eloped couple starts getting frisky with each other even before they enter the door. On the next morning, they visit the county's tourism office to learn what they need for the journey, but the officer informs them that they can't take a mule trip to Grand Canyon without a backcountry permit. She further explains that permits are unavailable in the current month of May, as they are usually given in January. The couple is disappointed with what they learn, but Nick is determined to find a way to go on their adventure trip. They head to the ranger station to inquire if they can take the trip, but they tell them the same thing about the permit. Later, the couple visits a bar and talks about accepting that their plan might not happen. But a drunk man interrupts them and boasts that he has done it in the past, to go on a forbidden dangerous trip, and he had plenty of experience of it. He introduces himself as Henry, and offers his expert service to guide them on their mule ride to the Grand Canyon. Nick excitedly inquires further about the journey, while Lori is skeptical to accept it since the man seems to have a shady character. When Nick asks if he can get them a permit, Henry claims that he can do it as long as they know whose hand to bribe. Lori interrupts their conversation and excuses her husband to talk, and when they are out of hearing range, she informs Nick that she doesn't like Henry as he looks like someone they cannot trust. Nick insists that they don't have to judge him by his looks, because the man is just eccentric, and ultimately, he can get them the permit they need as they might not get another chance to take a trip. Eventually, Nick is able to convince Lori to give him a chance, and the couple quickly inform Henry about it. The next day, as the trio prepares to leave, Lori asks Henry if he's able to get the permit, which the man answers yes, but didn't actually show it to them. As they begin their journey, they traverse the rocky parts of the mountain while Henry tells them some historical information about the place. They take some pictures of the beautiful scenery, while their guide drinks some alcohol along the way. Henry tells them stories about him getting mauled by the same bobcat 3 times, and even show them the scar he got from the encounter. They explore caves and get amazed by the beautiful rock formations, and when they go back to camp, Henry offers to take them to old petroglyphs which are a half-day ride away. Lori doesn't want to go because it sounds dangerous, but after some convincing from Nick, she eventually gives in and agrees to the journey. An hour away from their destination, Henry's mule gets startled by a rattlesnake, causing all their ride to flee. In the process, Henry gets bitten twice by rattlesnakes and Lori immediately checks her phone to get help, but is unable to find any signal. Nick is able to capture one of the mules back, while Lori tries to patch Henry's wound and put a splint on his arm. As the night approaches, they are forced to camp in the area, build a fire, and even cook the snake that has bitten Henry. The guide begins showing symptoms from the snake venom inside his system, and the man's fever sets in. The next day, Henry's condition becomes worse and he starts getting delirious. As they head back, it feels like it's taking forever and Lori expresses her fear of being lost. Henry continues to weaken and accidentally lets go of their remaining mule, so Nick tries to get their ride back without success. While Lori is trying to tend to their guide, the man eventually succumbs to his injuries and lost his life. The couple buries him and is left to struggle to find a way out, now without a guide, a mule to ride, and the supplies that they need to stay alive. In the morning, they choose a path to follow and continue their hike, and without food or water left, they chew the gum Lori stashed in her small bag. After a few hours hike, the couple reaches a dead end where the petroglyphs are, and realizes that they've spent the last hour going the wrong way. With all the stress and hunger they feel, the two start blaming each other for their current predicament. Lori tries her phone but is still unable to get a signal, so Nick proposes to climb up the rock face in the hope of getting a better reception. When Lori checks her phone, she manages to call 911 but is only able to say that they're in trouble before losing the signal. They try again while Nick is holding Lori's weight to get better reception, but the man loses his grip in the crevice and the couple fall to the ground. During the fall, Lori is fortunately unharmed but her phone gets broken. The worst part is Nick, as he broke his leg when it gets trapped in a crevice at the base of the rock face. Lori tries to free his broken leg but even as she pulls him harder, they are unable to get his leg out of the boulder. As time passes by, a wolf smells the blood from Nick's injury and starts circling the area. Nick thinks that when Henry got their permit and they didn't show up in time at the time they're supposed to be back, a rescue party will be dispatched and they just have to wait for it. Lori expresses her doubt that Henry was able to really get a permit for their trip, so their chance of being rescued is low to none. But the couple still hopes that the brief call on 911 will be traced to their location, so they still wait and hope for a rescue party to arrive. When Nick mentions the wolf that he saw, Lori quickly rushes to try to get Nick out of being trapped. Eventually, Nick suggests cutting his leg off using Henry's knife, so they can be able to keep going. Initially, Lori strongly refuses to cut her husband's leg, but after realizing that there might be no help coming for them, she relents and agrees to Nick's plan. Their only problem is, Henry's knife was buried with him, so Lori has to go back to retrieve the knife from his body. Lori is now determined to cut Nick's leg, so before she heads out to retrieve Henry's knife, she gathers some wood and builds a fire for him. As she travels back to where Henry was buried, she finds some bird that started eating the dead corpse. She then throws a rock to shoo the bird away and rushes to get Henry's knife. Thankfully, Lori is able to find her way back to her husband, but the man is barely conscious, so she starts working on cutting his leg. By that time, the infection has set into his wound and Nick is in horrible shape. She also finds out that Henry is in fact able to get them a permit, but the rescue will not even know where to look for them as they divert from their original destination. She goes back to working on how to cut Nick's leg, and asks him to bite a piece of wood before she actually did it. After successfully severing his leg, she works on cauterizing the wound by heating the blade in the fire. By this time, Nick loses consciousness, so Lori just continues working on her husband. When night falls, a pack of wolves gets attracted by the smell of blood and tries to attack them. Lori successfully chases them off by using the knife, so after the wolves are temporarily gone, she builds a bigger fire to help fend off the animals. But the wolves relentlessly try to attack again, and one is able to bite Lori's leg, but she luckily stabs it before it can drag her to its pack. In the morning, Lori fashions a stretcher to move Nick, but the man's condition is getting worse by the minute and he starts having hallucinations. She tries to feed him with roast wolf meat from the one that she killed, but the man is unable to swallow and asks for gum instead. When Lori tries to drag the improvised stretcher again, it breaks, so she tries to drag her husband, rejecting his pleas to leave him behind. Meanwhile, the wolves track the smell of blood and keep on following the couple. When Nick loses consciousness, Lori checks his stump and finds that the infection is getting worse. The wound starts to smell, which was a sign that gangrene had set in, but with a non-existent supply, she just cut a piece of cloth from her shirt to bind it again. At the time when Nick is briefly coherent, he profusely apologized to Lori for their current situation and tells her that he feels like he's fading. Lori feels emotionally frustrated, as she cannot able to do anything more to help her husband. When Lori hears the wolves howling, she tries to drag Nick but is unable to carry his weight. The wolves relentlessly attack them and drag Nick, but being exhausted from days without food or water, Lori loses the ability to defend him. The wolves seem to bide their time and surround the couple, as if waiting for the best chance to get their meal. Without any other option left, Lori decides to prevent Nick from suffering through being eaten alive, by performing euthanasia and suffocating him with her hands. After the man breathes his last, Lori breaks down and goes into shock as a rescue helicopter rounds the edge of the canyon. The wolves run away and the paramedic rushes to help the couple and administer first aid, while Lori is kneeling next to Nick's body. Turns out that they are able to trace her 911 call, and she's probably thinking that if she waited for a few more minutes, Nick would be alive. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. You can also hit the notification bell and like the video to help the channel out. Thank you.